Hi everyone, thanks for coming along to creating characters from a neurodivergent point of view. So I'm David Green. I've met some of you last night, last year or the year before, and today in the deal hall. I'm a fantasy writer. I have a epic fantasy series and an urban fantasy series that are downstairs. I have a table down there if you want to come and check them out. I also write cozy fantasy as well, which is what I publish through like my agent and that all kind of stuff, which is a horrific experience for neurodivergent people. It is terrible. But I write those ones because after I finished writing epic fantasy series, I was like, I can't face another epic fantasy series in the next few years, so I need to do something else because it was so involved, so in depth. And from a neurodivergent point of view, I'm autistic. I tend to get into huge details and stuff and really, really drill down in stuff, which can be a blessing and a curse, as I'm sure if anyone else is like that. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's the kind of things we're going to be looking at today in terms of character creation. So a little bit about kind of me and my autism. I was diagnosed late in life. My mum is Irish. She's from just 10 minutes down the road. And my dad is from Cornwall. And for some reason, we grew up in Manchester. I don't know why. Just why not? It's kind of in the middle if you go in a leg, in an upside down shape, I guess. Went back and two between Manchester and Beach Hill is where my family is from. It's from a pit called it's just in between Newin and Kiltulla, if anyone knows the area. So you spend quite a lot of time in between there. And that I always kind of had this feeling that I was not quite English enough to be English, and I was not quite, which is a good thing, and not quite Irish enough to be Irish. And obviously I got the accent. I had an Irish accent when I was a kid. It got bullied out of me at school. And so I had a very strong Mancunian accent for a number of years. But I never really kind of felt like I belonged in either one. And that was a common thing throughout my life, going through things, through work, through school. I had a few close friends, but it was very, very close friends, and I didn't really kind of mix with other people. Never really kind of felt like I belonged in a specific place. And, you muddle through life. You go through it. You get all this kind of stuff. So I got married. I had a child. As my son Ollie, who's 7, and when he was born was when I just started writing. Actually, it's something I wanted to do my entire life, but I kept putting it off. It's like, I don't know if I'm good enough to do it. I don't know if I have the time. Kept making excuses and what have you. And when he was born, I was like, well, if I'm never going to do it now, because I stopped work and I stayed at home to look after my son. And I was like, if I'm never going to do it now, I'm never going to do it. And then the pandemic started, and it's like, well, I should really start doing it. But as he was kind of getting older, he started preschool, and after the first couple of weeks, they were talking to the people around the preschool, and they were like, he's very, very particular about patterns and about he likes to play on his own. He likes to organise all the toys in size order and colour order and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, I like to do that. What's wrong? That's fine. And they're like, okay. And then there's a couple of things. And his memory had been amazing since birth. Since he was like 8 months old, he could do A to Z in the alphabet. It wasn't that he knew what they were. He could just hear a song, like, the babies listen to like this kind of thing. And he could do it all. And he could say a letter for each one as well. He just remembered them. His memory was extraordinary. So as he was getting a little bit older, he's like 2, he started preschool, and he's about 2.5. And before the Christmas came up, he was struggling. He was coming home, and he was organising the entire house when he'd come home. Everything, he'd come home, all of his teddies would be in order across the thing, all of his toys would be in like these patterns. And one of the people said, it might be worth looking into getting assessed for autism. And so we did, because I might as well get it done very, very early. And we decided to go private because wanted to get it sorted out before he started school, and it can take a long, long time if anyone's been through that process. So as we were doing that, we had to, as parents, we had to fill out our forms about us, and we had to get our parents to fill out forms about us as well, about what we were like as children. And When we went for the assessment, so part of the assessment was they'd take all these forms, they'd read them, and then they'd watch how Ollie would play with other people. So he'd watch him when he was playing on his own, they'd watch him when he was playing with each parent separately and each parent together and parents together, and then other people. And after when me and him were playing, and it's like about half an hour, just kind of watching everything, I was leaving the room, and one of the psychiatrists said, "Where's your diagnosis form for autism?" And I said, "I don't have one because I'm not autistic." And she was like, "I think you should probably get assessed for autism," because So I did, and I was like 30. I'm 42 now, so I was like 38 or so then. So obviously it was really, really late in life. And I'd started writing, I'd started building up my writing career, and I was getting people that were sending me emails and stuff like that saying, "I really like this character because they're autistic like me." And I was like, this is kind of strange because I never sat down to actually write an autistic character at that point. And it made me have to kind of think about, well, I obviously can write characters that are autistic very well, but I have to try to write characters that are not autistic as well, because not everyone in the world is autistic. The world would be amazing if everyone in the world was autistic. There'd be so much order, so many rules. It would be brilliant. Everyone would have a great time, an organised and fun, great time. So, and this is what we're kind of looking at for character creation, because I don't know if anyone in the room is a novelist, a writer, or wants to have ambitions to be a writer, or we're writing characters for TTRPGs or building worlds for TTRPGs. But this is what we're kind of looking at. And the way I look at building anything is and there's this thing where it's like, this is the rule that I do, but there's always an exception to the rule. That's how writing works. If you read Stephen King's On Writing and then read one of his books, you'll see that he breaks most of the rules that he talks about in On Writing, because that's just the way that writing works. But for me, most of the time, whenever I sit down to create a new world, or if it's for a campaign, or if it's for a book, or if it's for a short story or whatever, I start with the character first. It's always the character. Because for me, is I figure out what this character is going to be, and then I like to make the world around them as difficult and horrible and challenging as possible, because that brings conflict, and conflict brings drama, and that's where your story lies. And, I obviously write cozy fantasy, so it's not always like people getting their heads chopped off and genocide. That's my epic fantasy stuff. That's fine, that's there, right? But for cozy fantasy, it's like, well, what is the thing that's going to be conflict for an elderly map maker, for example, which is what my cozy fantasy is about, is an autistic map maker. He's looking for his heart's desire. Where's the conflict in that? And that you try and find these things through the character, okay? So there's like a kind of a saying that creating a character is like interviewing someone for a job. A job is to appear in your work of fiction. If you've ever been interviewed or interviewed someone yourself, and obviously interviews are quite not a nice experience in general, but particularly for neurodivergent people, it's like we're getting judged. So that's what an interview is, and it's straight away you're going in there and it's like, I have to try to hit these markers of what they're looking for, which is not what I am, but I'm going to have to try and pretend that this is me so I can fit into this structure of whatever job this is, right? So, but if you've been through it, you'll know it's a good way to discover specific and certain aspects of a person's character. But you don't really get to know, in terms of fiction, you don't get to know that character until you place them into that world. You can create the character, you can know everything about them, but until you place them into the world and get them interacting with other characters, you find out a lot more like them. And it's the same with a job interview. With a job, you do the interview. I used to work in retail management somehow. I don't know how I did it for so many years. I did it for like 20 odd years. So I've interviewed lots of people, and you get like you think this person might be good, and then you put them in the environment and you're like, I don't know what I was thinking. Right? Or it's just not working out when you put them in the mix. It's the same with your characters, right? You put them there and you see what is going to happen. If anyone has played role-playing games, anyone has run one as a game master, and you get the people playing, and you might have the best thing laid out. You've got this campaign, it's going to be amazing. You've got all of them, and then people start playing it, and it just goes off in a completely different direction. And that's just what happens when you put characters and people into these situations. But how does it look like from a neurodivergent point of view? What does being autistic bring when you're creating characters, okay? And particularly characters that are not artistic, because another writing saying, and it's something that I could not get my head around for a long, long time because I'm quite literal, which is not a surprise, is write what you know. Okay, so I used to hear that and I go, well, how does anyone invent anything? How did people write Lord of the Rings? How did Tolkien write Lord of the Rings? Like, it's not hobbits wandering around. He's not a hobbit. How do you write what you know? How, this kind of thing. Write what you know, write what you know. And I was taking it in a very literal kind of way. But what I kind of figured out was it's not what you know. It's not what you know in a kind of external sense. It's what you know internally. Okay, and when you're bringing your experiences into the characters that you're creating, in some way, there's always a little bit of the creator in all of the characters, and that can even be like the horrible characters that you make. There is something of you in there. Sadly, I have some horrible characters, and I can quite empathize with them sometimes. I'm like, yeah, I understand why they're doing this, because I've had that feeling once or twice. I've had that, but there's some characters that are absolutely a lot closer to who you are and what you're putting in there. So as an artistic person, it's very, very easy to kind of have that commentary and experience in every character that I create of my experience. So you want to kind of look at it a different way and try and think, well, how do I make a neurotypical character? How do I make characters that are different from everyone else, right? And there's a few things that work for me, and when creating multiple characters and when doing it, but I always start with the first one. And the first one is I look at how I have kind of passed as a neurotypical person for most of my life, right? And obviously that is a lot of kind of hard work and repetition and learning things and how I view the world. And that's how I look at making characters. And I think it's where if you are neurodivergent, you can apply this. So one of the things that I always think about is how is masking, okay? So I don't know if anyone heard of the term masking yet. So for people that haven't, masking is basically when you feel like you are, inside you are other than everyone else that is the mainstream, basically. And you go and you're like, I have to wear this mask to fit in with everyone else. So it's like school, jobs, social settings, doing talks for people at conventions, selling books when there's other people. You're like, they're really great at selling things, and I'm like, just want to come over and talk to me a little bit. We'll be fine. Your masking is when you're putting on this mask where you're like, I'm going to be this person. Okay, I'm going to be the person that's like super confident. I'm going to be the person that can go and be a leader of people in a job, even though like really what I want to do is when I go home is sit in a dark room with a blanket over my head and listen to I don't know, something that I've been obsessing with like over and over and over and over again, and just like, find my happy place, right? I would never do those things in public. I never used to. And I've become trying to break the masking. But understanding that and understanding my experience of masking when creating characters is really, really helpful. Because not only does it, if you're creating a character that's quite isolated, perfect, because you understand it straight away, right? But then if you're trying to write a character that is a leader, or someone who is like, really confident, or someone who's really, really charismatic, or someone who is like, from a point in your life where you've gone, I've had to be that person to try to fit in, to try to get up, so people don't notice that I am different from they are, and start asking questions. So you bring in that kind of, so I always kind of think of that. I'm like, okay, so this character that I want them to be is, for example, a general in an army, right? Okay, they're going to be someone who is quite a magnetic character. They're going to be someone who is easy under pressure. They're going to be someone who can give instructions clearly, right? I mean, that's what you'd expect from a leader and that kind of thing. So I kind of feel, well, that's not me. I'm none of those things, right? But I have pretended to be those things in my life. I have masked to get away with doing it, right? So I try to think of, well, what was I doing? How did I do it? What were the kind of things that I was saying? What was my personality when I was masking as those kinds of people? And there you start the starting point for that character, right? And I think this is where it's really, really beneficial. Beneficial is not really the right word, but advantageous for neurodivergent people to kind of understand the spectrum of personality types, because we've had to try to fit in with those personality types at some point in our lives, right? The other thing that goes with that, and the way that you kind of, how particularly autistic people, and it's not just autistic people, it's people with ADHD as well, because people with ADHD try to hide those aspects of themselves because they can be told as they're naughty children, or they can be bad employees, or they can be bad friends because you're always late and you don't return my calls, and this, and this, and this, right? So you try to hide it. The way that we try to mask is by people watching. And we start doing it from a really, really early age, right? I see my son doing it all the time. He's just watching people and he's studying them and he's trying to study people's facial expressions. Because it's like, this is what people look like when they're happy, or this is when... And he gets very, very confused by just neutral facial expressions, right? You say something that can go in... If you say a response that can be in a different... It can go in different directions, you can read it in a different way. It really confuses him, because if it's with a blank face, he doesn't understand the context of what you're saying, right? So with that, I know... And so it's an aspect of masking for me, is that when I'm talking to him, I have to make sure that I'm being very, very clear with how I'm presenting myself, okay? To help him kind of understand it. But he's doing that from an early age. He's been doing that since he was 4 years old. He'd go up to, and this is one of the things that was one of his markers of being autistic. It's like his preschool teachers were saying, he goes up to the kids and when he says something, he stares in the face like this, right? But he used to do that to me, and I used to just think it was funny, right? So it's just like, but he still does it. He tries not to, he holds himself back, but I can tell when he's flustered and he really doesn't know, he'll get right up into someone's face just to kind of see, like, how do they look, right? What is the meaning behind these words that they're saying? And we start people watching a little bit more. We're a bit more subtle about it when we get older, and it's great. People watching is loads of fun. I love people watching. I used to work in a shop in Galway on Shop Street, and where I kind of like where we were set up, we could watch the high street going past, and it was amazing just watching the variety of people going past, what they were doing. One time I saw this grown man, he must have been about 50, come out of the cafe with an ice cream cone, and as he was walking out, it fell off. And no lie, he was like, oh, for fuck's sake, like this. And then he picked it up, put it back on, and then took a lick and walked off. Right? And I was thinking, I'm the weird one. So people watching is great. And what is great about people watching and then character creation is you're watching how people interact with one another, okay? I know how I would like to interact with people. Mostly it is sitting in silence and doing something that I enjoy, what they enjoy as well, and we can keep it separate, right? And every so often we go, that looks really good. Yeah, that looks good too. And then just ignore each other for a little while. It's great. And, but you're still there together. It's called parallel playing. Autistic children start doing it when they're really small. It can turn into adulthood where it becomes separate interests, right? Or something like that. I like silence. I like listening to music on headphones. Even when I'm in a house on my own when I'm working, I have headphones on, and I'm just like oblivious to everything else that's going on, right? It's fine if people are around me; they can do whatever they want. But that's not how the rest of the world works, right? And that's not how you want all of your characters to work, unless you're writing a character that is like that. That's when it comes very, very naturally. So to understand how other characters work, or how other people work, is to watch other people, to see how people sat next to each other, see what people's body language is like, to see what people's facial expressions are like when they're talking, to see those different personality types that are interacting. You see, if you are creating this leader, you see someone like that in your life, okay? And you think, well, how do they interact with people? How do they expect people to be around them? How are people interacting with them? How are they socializing with them? And you study that as my way of getting through life, as being able to pass as normal. I'm able to kind of, when I'm creating a character, I'm like, well, I've seen this because I've been studying people for most of my 42 years, right, to try and fit in. So I understand that, this is how this person would react. This is how this person would react. This is how this type of person would react. And again, it's an advantageous aspect of being autistic, is that we have just learned to study people. So we can pull on these different characters. We've seen them in our lives. We've maybe emulated them in our lives. It's like this person seems to have it all. They have it all. They know how to do it all. They can go into any situation and they are great. They get on with it. And I try and do the same thing, and people think I'm just like the most bizarre person in the world. It's like, how do they do it? And I can't, but it's because they know how to do it. It's natural, okay? And that is another thing that brings us on to another thing that's advantageous when you are autistic is patterns in behaviour, okay? We spot patterns in general really, really well. We see the patterns repeating. We can see the patterns ahead of time in a lot of ways. But we can also see patterns in people's behaviours. And this is where it gets really, say it's advantageous when building characters, but in real life and social situations, it's quite tough actually. I'm sure people have the same, will understand what I'm saying now with this is that you can see, you might see a repeated pattern in the way that someone behaves towards you or towards other people. And it might be subtle things, right? You might see that you might have a friend that only ever talks to you if you're the one that instigates the conversation, the contact, right? And it might be just like a subtle thing. It might not be something that's like really stands out. But then if you do point that out, it becomes a big deal, right? So you learn to be like, well, I recognize it, but I'm not going to say anything about it, okay? We see the people that are late all the time. We see the people that are early all the time. We see the people that take the lunches at the same time. We see the people that eat the same food every single day because we're one of them people and we like that. We see people that are like quite chaotic, and in a way we kind of admire it, you know? It's like, it's nice to have that kind of chaos as well. It's like, I wish I could be like that a little bit. It's why autistic people and ADHD people get on so well with each other, by the way, because I think we're both kind of fascinated with each other. It's like, you know, they're like, I wish I could be so structured, and we're like, I wish I could just like embrace the chaos every so often, but we don't really see that like there's more to it. There's more underneath both of them is trauma, right? Because it's like, you know, we want to be a little bit like each other. But we notice these patterns in behaviour. We notice these patterns in life. So where that comes to bringing those into characters, everyone has patterns of behaviour, right? And if you're creating this character, this general, for example, that we're using as an example, you bring those patterns to that character. What time do they wake up every morning? Because a general would probably wake up at a certain time every single day at the same time, you'd imagine. What do they have? What do they do first as soon as they wake up? You know, are they the type of person that has to have a coffee before they get out of bed? And are they the type of person that gets just straight to work, straight at it? Do they dress first? Do they shower? Do all these things that we see in our lives that we pick up from other people around us? We know, and we can pull that into our characters, and we see different versions of it. It doesn't have to be the same thing, but we know we can see these patterns, and everyone has them. And touching it a little bit, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later on, another aspect of creating characters and creating different types of characters is wish fulfillment, okay? I'm sure everyone has it, neurotypicals to neurodivergent people, all across the way. People have an aspect of wish fulfillment. They see someone else and they think, oh God, that looks so good. I wish I could do that, right? I read some books from some of my peers and colleagues, and I think, God, I wish I could write as well as they do. They're amazing. And they're probably thinking the same thing about me. That's just the way it is. It's nature. But as a autistic person or a divergent person, we have this thing because we kind of grow up thinking that we're not good enough, because we get told we're not good enough quite a lot. Like, you know, why can't you do this like this person can? Why can't you understand this like this person can? Why can't you do this thing like this person can? And we grow up hearing this all the time. Like, you know, why can't you fit in? Why is it so hard for you? And you start thinking that yourself, and you do think it. You know, you see, like I mentioned before, you see in social aspects, you see in work aspects, you see these people, it comes so easily to them, or so you think. And you try to copy them a little bit and it doesn't quite work. And you think, oh, you know, why is it so easy for other people? Why can't I fit in? Especially if you kind of go through life and you get your kind of diagnosis for these kind of things a little bit later in life, which brings like a little bit of relief, you know, it brings a little bit of self-forgiveness. So you think, well, you know what, I wasn't just an absolute weirdo, I'm actually autistic. So that's, you know, that's why I couldn't quite cope with this, or I couldn't understand this, or I couldn't do this. Obviously, if it's earlier in your life, it's part of your character, it's part of your experience, you can communicate it with people, or if you can't communicate it, it's people around you can communicate it. But there is still always going to be that kind of aspect of wish fulfillment. I've seen that other person and seen that example of, that is amazing, I wish I could do that, right? And we can do that with the characters that we create. So a lot of the characters that I create is pure wish fulfillment. It's something that like I wish that I could do. We'll talk about it a little bit more detail a little bit later on, but one of the things, most of the characters that I create in my campaigns that I play are just like pure agents of chaos, because I wish I could be like that in real life, right? They're always chaotic neutral. I'm like, in my mind, I am lawful good, like no question about it. That's just where I am. I wouldn't quite stray far into wanting to be like bad, like it's not really my kind of thing, but chaotic neutral is absolutely where I'd love to be. When I play stuff like Mass Effect or Dragon Age, that's where it is. It's always there in the middle, right? I just love it. It's because I want to be like that. Well, I don't want to be like, I wish I could be like that sometimes, I suppose, is the better way of saying it. So, obviously, it's easier it would be a lot easier for me if every single character that I ever created was autistic. I know the experience, I've lived the experience. I have people in my life that are autistic. I can see it, I can spot the patterns, I can spot the behavior. I have the experience that I can apply, right? But not everyone in the world is neurotypical. Neurodivergent. It's a neurotypical world. It's a world that is built for neurotypicals. Neurotypical people make the rules. We have to fit in with those rules, okay? So there is a thing where I will sort of see neurodivergent characters that are created in works, so be that movies, TV shows, books, by neurotypical people. And for me, they don't ring true. Mostly, like I think in most cases, they don't ring true. The more stereotypical, you think of someone like Sheldon Cooper, or Rain Man, and that's basically it. Like, you know, it's either one or the other, right? And like, by the way, Sheldon Cooper becomes less autistic as time goes on and what have you, which is a whole different other thing. But it's that thing where they look at it and go, what's the stereotype? Okay, there's one or the other. That's what it is. That's what you're always going to get. And it's always like, you know, kind of like with a butt of the joke a little bit. You know, it's because we can be a character that's made kind of bit of fun of and all that kind of thing. And it's, you know what you're going to get unless it's written by an autistic person. You get that kind of that level of authenticity. But I think the other way around is that I think autistic people, when we set out to write neurotypical characters, can do it quite well, because we've had to fit in so much in our lives that we know at secondhand, like, you know, this is how to do it. And so with that in mind is when you are trying to think of a character, and no matter what it is, you sit down and think this is what they're going to be. You always have to remember, no matter if they're neurodivergent, if they're neurotypical, no matter what their sex is, no matter what their gender is, no matter what their culture is, no matter the colour of their skin, is that every single person is the main character in their own existence. Okay, and that's a really, really important thing to consider when building characters. And this is even if you're, you know, building a campaign and you've got side characters that your party is going to come and get a mission off, or they're going to come stay in the tavern, or they're going to come this. That person is the main character in their existence, right? They might recognize that there are people that have a more important story in their world, but they are still the main character in their tale, right? And we need to always remember that. So a background character should always be having their own story. And if they come into story, it means they're just simply interconnecting with the other characters at some point, right? And once those characters leave, the story of that side character or that one that's just popped up goes off in a different direction. They're doing whatever it is they do. And that's something we always have to consider, because as an autistic person, I will be like, what is the story? What is the story? What is the thing with my main characters that I've created? But I need to remember that the world is living and breathing and everyone else has their story that's going in there as well. And good examples of that is that you think of like really, really kind of successful TV shows that have had a character that is like a minor character that suddenly has a spin-off that becomes more successful. So like Frasier Crane, for example, in Cheers and in Frasier. That's for some of the older people in the crowd. For some of the younger ones, you think of something like, I've got another older one for you, Alan Shaw in The Practice and Boston Legal. You know, he pops up in the last season, then he gets his own spin-off. But you think about the superheroes in the MCU, this is for the younger crowd. You know, they'll cameo in one of the films and it's like, but you know, they're just coming in, they're just intersecting, they've got their whole other thing that's going on, right? And if Iron Man, for example, pops up in Spider-Man, do you think Iron Man is thinking that I'm the supporting character in this story? Like, absolutely not, right? It's like I'm doing my main story, and I just happen to bump into Spider-Man to sort out some of his shit that he's got himself into, which is all Iron Man's fault, really, technically, because he's just an absolute disaster. But anyway, so when we're coming down to sit down and look at creating characters, there's a few things that we need to look at. One of those, as mentioned before, is challenges. Okay, every character, whenever you make a character, no matter what it is, there needs to be some kind of challenge for them. Okay, and that is even if it is a side character that runs a tavern. If you're making a TTRPG and you have someone who comes in, stays at an inn one day, and they're doing the thing. Their challenge is the party that's coming into the thing that are just going to be absolute agents of chaos, disrupting everything. Because let's just think about it. My group has spent 3 hours trying to get through a door before. And then you have these people that are wandering into their lives and like, oh God, it's these people again that are staying. What is going to happen? What's the next thing, right? So you're thinking, what is the challenges of everyone? So as a neurodivergent person. We face challenges. I mean, everyone faces challenges every day, but I know what specific challenges that I face every day, right? It might be that someone's changed the plans at last minute, and that really no matter how hard I try throughout my whole life, I can't get my head around it. Never. It really sends me off on the deep end, right? And I've come up with ways to kind of cope with how I feel about it, but it's never been like, I'm completely fine. Unless it's something I didn't want to do. And then I'm like, brilliant. This is great. Thank you so much for this. But it's kind of thinking, what are the challenges that you want? So my epic fantasy series, the main character in that, it's multiple POV, but the main character is a woman called Colleen. She's in her mid-30s, and she has been estranged with her mother for 10 years for something that happened. That it was just a thing that they fundamentally disagreed on, okay? And it was just deep in their core, she just can't forgive her mother for it, right? And the mother is like, kind of like, I absolutely did the right thing. Even though it was a bad thing that I did, I would do it again because she's my daughter and I would do it. And the younger, well, she's not younger, she's in her 30s, but she just can't get her head around it. She's like, you saved my life, but at what cost? And I can't forgive you because of that cost, because what you did, in her point, is really like the worst thing imaginable. So the natural challenge for that is to put those two together, okay? They've been estranged because of Colleen's decision. She doesn't want anything to do with her anymore. The mother's also been banished to somewhere but she's not she's still around, right? She could still visit her. They have a link in each other's mind where they could talk to each other if they want to, but she's just blocked it off completely. She's made this decision that she is never going to talk to her ever again, okay? Even those people in her life that are saying you should do, she was right, and people have different views on it. And it's interesting, actually, parents always agree with Zana, who's Colleen's mother, and younger people that don't have kids always agree with Colleen. It's very, very funny. The natural challenge for that is to put them back together, is that Colleen has to go and see her mother for something that is important for the story. That is the natural step because it's her biggest challenge, right? And then after you get through that, especially in a series or in a story, it's like, what is the next challenge? Now that they're back together, what is the next challenge? The next challenge is to take that relationship away completely. What's next, right? You've been having this thing in your mind for years. You finally confronted it, and then it's the decision to move on is taken away from you. If you're going to stay in it or move on from it, it's taken away. That's the next challenge. And it's thinking of this as what are the next challenges? And you can think about in your life, For me, as an autistic person, one of my challenges is to find clothes that I feel comfortable in. I find clothes that I feel comfortable in, that the material feels great, there's no labels inside, feels fantastic. And you get those same clothes all the time. You might just get different colours that you like. It's just the same, or sometimes just the exact same clothes, like Bart Simpson and Homer Simpson. It's just the same clothes all the time. And then the challenge is that the people that make those clothes add a label, or they change the material slightly, and it's a bit itchy or something. It's a small things in the world in the grand scheme thing, but for me, that's like I have to go and find the new sort of clothes that I like to wear. It's not that I like to wear them. It's not. I don't really care about how they look. It's how they feel. That's the challenge, right? And it's like that's these kind of things. You apply these things, and no matter what it is that you're writing, no matter what it is you're creating, you just up the scale of it, right? If you're writing an epic fantasy or you're doing an epic campaign, someone's clothing, if it's itching, isn't going to really kind of rank highly on the scale of like, on what you want. But if you're doing like something smaller scale, you want to bring it back to a more personal thing, you have that experience of like, well, what are my daily challenges? What bothers me? Does anyone have like a favorite cafe that has like the food, they cook it exactly the way, and then they change the menu? And yes, right? And you're like, oh God, there's a new chef that comes with the same menu, different chef, and it's like, oh, it's only a small change, but I like the way they used to put the right amount of seasoning on the chips, and before now it's too much, and now it's not enough. And it's that kind of thing. You think about these, but you can put it in a bigger scale, right? It's like, think of the worst things in your challenges in your life, and then just apply those to your characters. But it's always, the story is created through conflicts, and challenges create conflicts, okay? And it just depends on how big you want to go with it. Another thing that is really, really beneficial of being autistic when you are creating characters is that we all have special interests, okay? And those kind of things are special interests that we acquire when we're younger, and they stay through us throughout our whole lives, right? And for me, it's Lord of the Rings and maps. And it's Lord of the Rings and maps they come together perfectly. I love it, right? I love maps just in general. Lord of the Rings, they're my special interest. I could do this all just about Lord of the Rings for about 5 hours non-stop. And then I'd only stop because I'd need to drink some water and probably go to the toilet. And then I'd come back and happily start talking about it again. I could do the same thing with Mapcraft. My son is trains and space, and he knows NASA t-shirt right there. He knows everything about them. I've learned so much from him. Like I'm like an expert in these weird things now that I was like, I had no interest in him before, but now I'm like, yes, I know so much about it. But to a degree, everyone has special interests, right? It might not be as intense as a neurodivergent person, but everyone has them. And it's a really, really easy thing to forget when you're making characters is you want them to be like so interested in the story that you've made and the plot that you've made, and you forget to give them other interests, right? And giving them interests makes them more grounded and makes them more real, right? And you can think of like something like even like Sherlock Holmes, like he loves to play the violin. We all know that about him. It's absolutely nothing to do with his character. It's nothing to do with the stories that he's in. It's nothing to do with the plots. But we all know that he loves that, right? We know that he loves that aspect. We know that Captain Picard loves tea and pretending he's French for some reason. We know these things about these beloved characters, that they have these just things that they like. It's not important to the story. But so as an autistic person, you can put that into your character. So we know special interests really, really well. So it's something that we might think of automatically. Well, this is the character. These are the challenges. This is what they are. This is what they look like. They also like these things, right? And a lot of times we give them our special interests. Like the main character in my cozy fantasy is a map maker. He's an autistic map maker, which was really, really easy to write. The only fact is he's 100 years old and I'm not that age yet. But since I've turned 40, I can feel 100 years old. So that was great to do that. But special interests, always give those characters that you're making something that they're interested in. It gives them that little bit, it pulls the reader in a little bit more, makes them more, you can connect with them a little bit more, because it's like, well, yeah, I have the same interest actually, or I know someone who likes that kind of thing, or they feel real, right? And we talked about it a little bit more before as well, wish fulfillment, embracing the chaos, right? So for neurodivergent people, ones that are particularly autistic, it's a little bit different for ADHD people, I expect. It might be that they might want to make someone that is really all about the rules, very structured, very kind of, because I have ADHD friends and they look at me and they go, "You're so organized." It's like, I am organized if everything is going completely right today. Like, if nothing changes, then it's like absolute chaos and I hate it. But it looks that way because I've worked on this structure, this chaos. I've structured my life to be like this, right? And it's tiring. it's annoying sometimes because it's like, I have to do this, this, and this before I can do this. And I really want to do this today, but I have to do these things first, right? So that's where you embrace the chaos. Just go like, well, you know what? I'm going to make someone that is completely different from me, which is what I always do in my TTRPGs when I'm playing as a character. And they are always chaotic. And they are always through people watching, looking at other people and thinking, well, this is what it's like for the other people. But that's part of that as well, right? So if you want to do, if that is like you, if you are like me and you have this character, just think of, well, what's the opposite? What are the things that like I've seen people do and go, I'd love to have done that. I'd love to have done that in that situation. But then do it the other way around as well. If you are like that naturally and you're kind of like, well, I've seen people that have this structure and I want my character to be like that. You've got the examples from watching it. And just to finish up, because we've got 5 minutes, is a great thing that autistics people like me are so good at is asking questions, right? If you're autistic yourself, or if you know people that are autistic, we like to ask questions. We like to understand why things are the way that they are. And this is the kind of thing that you want to ask about your characters. You ask yourself as many questions as you can think of about your character when you're creating them. Doesn't matter how big they are in the story. Doesn't matter their role in the story. Doesn't matter how much you're going to use them. But the more questions you can ask them, is better, the more you know about them, because when you kind of start asking questions and you're building on stuff and you're building on things, you're finding that conflict, you're finding that that drama, but you're also being able to build a world through it as well. Okay, so again, go back to my example of Colleen. When I was building that character, the relationship with the mother was the first thing that I kind of hit upon. But the next thing from that was like, well, she is very, very, she really believes in the religion of this world. It's really, really important to her, right? And that's the fundamental disagreement, that the magic is tied into the religion of the world. And they think, people like Colleen thinks that people that can use the magic should only be used for good. It should never be used for attack. It should only be used for a defense or for healing or for teaching, right? And then the mother uses it in a way to attack someone to save her. And that's why she can't agree with it. It's like, it's a blessing. It's a gift from the gods. We shouldn't abuse it, right? So when I kind of thought of that, I was like, well, what is the religion? What is this? What is it called? What is it? And then what is the people that don't believe in it quite so much? And you start to, when you build your character, you start to have these little lines that you can pull out of it and go, okay, well that'll make sense to the world, because you're trying to test your character, you're trying to go challenges for your character, so they naturally should come from what their character and their personality is. So you ask them all sorts of questions. So some of these, I've written down some of the questions that I usually ask myself when creating a character. Obviously name, age, physical appearance, but eye colour as well, because the amount of times, I do a lot of editing for people, and the amount of time people's eye colours change, it's like, I can't remember what eye colour they were. Like, I always remember that. Are their parents alive? What is the relationship with their parents? Or what was it? Are they married or in a relationship? Do they have children? Because that's going to dictate a lot about them, what their character, if they have children. It fundamentally does. I know I'm a different person now than I was before I had children, right? I had hair and I had a lot less grey in my beard. But also I'm a better person because I have children, right? And you think of, it does change something. It's a really important question. Does if they're off campaigning and adventuring, do they have kids at home? What's happening to the kids if they're off on the other side of the world, right? Who is the closest friend? Where do they live? What do they do outside the story? What is their greatest achievement? What are they proud about? A really, really important one is, what is their greatest fear? Because you want to use that as much as possible, right? And really keep hitting on that. And what do they want? What does your character want? That is their arc of their story. It's what do they want, right? But what your job is as a creator of a story is, what is stopping them from getting what they want? Because that's the thing that you need to keep using all the time. So, and really, the thing that's stopping them is you, because you're creating them, right? But other than that, what is stopping them? And it's just like, what is their biggest weakness? What is the biggest strength? What does happiness look like to them? What are the negative personality traits? What are the positive ones? So it's just asking questions. It's like someone you just met and you find fascinating. You just want to find out everything there is to know about them. And just to finish up, an important question when you're creating a cast. So you're doing this over and over again, you're putting characters. A really, really important part of the neurodivergent experience is, does that person like me? Okay? It's a really, really important for us to feel liked, because we don't really know if people like us or not. We don't get that social cue. I see it with my son. It's so important for him to feel like people like him. And he talks about it all the time. It's not something that's just come from me either. It's something that he just talks about. So that's a question to ask when you're creating these characters. Do they like each other? Right? Which ones, if you're creating a cast of them, which ones don't like each other? Why do they like each other, and why don't they like each other? Because again, that creates conflict. And it also makes it feel realer, makes it feel grounded. We've all been in situations where we've been in a work, or we've been on something where we're a group of people that have been put together, and some people will naturally like each other and get along straight away. Some people will despise each other as soon as they see each other. Just happens, doesn't it? Some people might take a little bit of time to warm up with each other, but that should be what it's like with your characters as well. Especially like if you're building a campaign, because it's fun. It's fun when people are kind of like got a bit of needle with each other. A really, really good example of that is Joe Abercrombie's first Law series, where like basically the whole crew of people just despise one another. It's that hero journey of going on a quest where they just don't like each other, and it's really amusing because it's like, and so when we go through all this and we're asking these questions and we're doing it all, we do it for all the other characters in the story as well. But the really, really important thing as well, though, is that when you do this, you'd want to do it for your antagonist of the story. And this is the thing to finish on. And when you do it for your antagonist, everything that you've decided for your protagonist, the antagonist should be the same exact things that they want, but they will do it in a different way. Okay? A lot of the time, they're the most real antagonists. It's like they're looking for what they think in their heads is something that is a good solution to something that's going to solve the problem, unless they are the ones that have created the problem. But they are willing to do something that your protagonist won't. Okay? They're willing to cross the line. And so you think of that, and you think of your character, and you look at those patterns of behavior, you look at those wish fulfillments, you look at all those other things that we've talked about, and you go, okay, so how can I break this with the antagonist? Where is this pattern of behavior that I can break it and turn them into a different thing that this character would never do? And as an autistic person, it's really, really easy to do, because we see it all the time. We see those patterns, we see those different types of behavior. We see the things where it's like, I wouldn't do this, right? I know I wouldn't do this, but this person would, because I've seen the pattern where they would. And every story is only as good as your villain. So don't skimp on creating the villain as well at the same time in anything that you're doing. So that is it. So thank you for coming to the talk. I hope you found something. Oh, thank you. I hope you all found something worthwhile from it, or at least a little bit entertaining. If anyone wants to talk further, I'm down. I've got a table downstairs for the rest of today and tomorrow. I'm going to be here tonight as well. I also do creative writing lessons, online ones, for any kind of level of writer, for any kind of thing that you're looking to do, be it if you've been published before, if you've sort of on the way, or if you're just kind of starting. They're 6-week lessons, they're online, and I've got a new block starting at the end of March. So I've got more details downstairs. But you can also find it on my website, which is davidgreenwriter.com. So thanks everyone for coming, and have a good rest of the con. Thank you.